Guys, I didn't want to make this video like this, but yeah. This is my Hackberrypi 0.
He's dead, Jim.
And let's get into the story of what happened. So, my original video, I purchased this with my own money. I was very excited for it. I love the size of it. I got it in and I booted it up and, hooked it up and did everything. And this is the Raspberry Pi Zero is very useful for certain things, certain jobs. If you want to run a VPN or whatever, or run a script, these are great. As a computing device that you're going to be using outdoors and throwing in your pocket, not so much. And I found that it was very laggy. It couldn't run browsers or any program that I really run on my U console, which was disappointing. But at the same time, it's like I got a 0. I should know like the performance of this thing. But yeah, so that got me thinking if I could find like another board to replace this, and that landed me with this guy, the Orange Pi 02W4G, which is the 4 gig RAM model. And on paper, this thing is a drop-in replacement for this and has way better performance, right? And you'd think, hey, like I could throw that in there. This is very similar, no problem. The only issue with this is that it doesn't have the required SPI, from what I've heard, to run the screen for the Hackberry. So while it does power up and you can install stuff onto it, your screen will not work, which was such a downer, like, and I wasted money on this, and there that goes. So it got me thinking. I found this, my CM4, and I said to myself, hey, I've got this left over from my U console. My U console has a CM5. Could I somehow get this to work on the Hackberrypi Zero, right? And after searching on Amazon, I found one of these. This is a WaveShare CM4 Nano A. Originally, I found this one, which is the Nano B. I'll explain what's going on here and why I have two. So, originally, I found this B version, right? The B version has that HDMI, which if you kind of measure it up, it's kind of in the same spot, right? It's not that far off from the 0. So I thought, oh, that's great. It also had Ethernet, which is right here, the USB port, which is also on the other one. I removed the Ethernet. So in the future, if I wanted to, I could put like Ethernet somewhere else. Just tangent. But I digress. After getting the board, I removed this CSI, DSI connector, USB port, and that Ethernet port, and just got to lining up these GPIO pins on the Hackberry, right? And if you look closely, right, so your orientation is going to be like this, right? You got that 1 and 2, right? It lines up with the 0 if you're holding it this way, which would make the CM4 upside down, which obviously you can't do. It'd be weird, right? You have to mount it in the Hackberry like this. So in order to solder on those pins, I had to solder them in crisscross. So basically, for example, and I'll have this all documented, so if I say something wrong, please check the documentation that I'm going to link underneath this video. Let's say, for example, this first line is 1, second line is 2. On the board, it's reversed, right? So you're going to be soldering your wires like this, going up to that board, which is doable if you have magnet wire. This is about, I believe, 28 gauge. It might be different. Check the description for the link. And after I soldered on those GPIO, it actually did work. I was like, whoa, okay, it works. I wanted USB functionality. Okay, cool. Remove the USB port that was there. Soldered on the 2 data pins in the middle. Do not solder on the power from this board. It will give you issues. Don't do it. Once I did that, Bam, got USB working. Cool, perfect. I did notice that the Hackberry could not power the CM4 fully, right? It would give me low power warnings, or it wouldn't even boot off the battery sometimes. I had to plug it in. So I thought to myself, hey, how can I step up the power? Because if you look at this charge controller that's here, this should be able to deliver 3 amps. You know, if you buy it on any of the, you know, those cheap Chinese battery chargers, this thing can do 3 amps. So me being the layman that I am, I don't know how to read schematics enough for me to figure out, okay, there's this component I got to remove. I just got a step up converter, which works pretty great. It takes that 4.7 to 5 volt half an amp that is for this Pi Zero and steps that up to 5 volt 2 to 3 amp, I believe, to give you the power you need for your CM4. And that worked great. I took the power from the 5 volt pin on the Hackberry. There are 2. You can remove one. You only need one. Just use one. It'll go to the input here, which all of this would be documented or placed in the video. You get a ground. You can use the ground from the USB or on the board. There are many ground spots that you can use, so no worries on that. And you take your output and you put it on the pin on this Nano board. Great. Powered up. Amazing. The issue that I fell into, and the reason why we're at this point where this mess is all in this box, is that I wanted the SD card to run from the board, right? And it's pretty straightforward. They're all labeled. You just have to match up everything here, or so I thought. And these were so small that I'm pretty sure I had something short. And now neither of these boards would read SD cards. They would not boot after trying to connect them up. I did have it work with this B board once, and that is what is in the video on my social media. I'll probably put a clip in it right here so you know what I'm talking about. But I did notice that the performance was degraded reading from here versus how it was when I had just the slot on this board. So I would recommend, if you're going to do this mod, just leave the SD card slot on this board. If you have to take out 4 screws to change your SD card, it's not the end of the world, honestly. If you're a better solder, if you can solder better than me, go for it, right? Maybe it'll work. Maybe it was something I did. Maybe it's the thinness of my wire. I don't know. But all I know now is that these boards do not read SD cards. They do not boot. And I know this at least, or the SD cards that I did try throughout the troubleshooting process did work. Because I put them in my other Hackberry. So I know they work. Or, well, not other Hackberry. I put them in a Raspberry Pi 4. But yeah, I am going to replace this board. I did order another one. Unfortunately, WaveShare ships direct from them, and Amazon doesn't have stock of them, so it's going to take a week. But I wanted to make this video for you guys. I wanted you guys to see how to do this, and if you want to do it, or if it's too much. I feel like for most people, this is not worth it. I'm going to be honest, it's not worth it. If you paid $140 for this thing, you might not want to destroy it to do this mod, right? You have to remove those pins, the push pins, and solder on. You could break traces. I broke many traces, and I had to scrape and solder to tiny little traces on this thing to get it to work. But yeah, like, that's how it works. And I planned to have it mounted something like this. For spacing, I did use some rubber feet. I have 2. I don't know if you guys can even see that, but there's a rubber foot there and one on the bottom, and that gives a pretty good spacing and height to get to my next point, which was the case. obviously you need a new case to house the CM4 and the board. I came up with this. I took some measurements and I cut this out, closed up where the 0 opening was, and added this brace to hold it. I also removed the HDMI because personally I will never use it. It does exist there if you want on the B. If you get the B, there is an A. The A is easier because you only have to remove the USB port and the CSI. If you get the B, you have to remove a Ethernet port, CSI, DSI, and the USB. And the controller for the Ethernet, which is pretty big. It'll still fit in here if you want that controller. I took it out because power, I wasn't sure if it would affect power. It probably doesn't, but yeah, it's a lot to take off versus if you get the A. The A is pretty simple. There's not a lot of stuff on it. Easy, straightforward. But I did create this. This has the original batteries. If you want to retain those, you know, it's cleaned up here. And then I have another version, which this was before I made the other version, so it still has the HDMI. My final version will not have this. This just gives you a big, giant space if you want to put a huge battery in there. I suggest getting something that's very thin. I think they have like 3,000 milliamp batteries that are thin that you can put in here. I did try to shave out some space, you know, in case you have a battery that's just not quite thin enough to fit. I also thought about cutting this in CAD and making it thicker, but in the spirit of what this project was going to represent to me, I wanted it to be very thin. I wanted it to be the same. I wanted it to be very similar to the original Hackberrypi Zero, right? We want to keep that profile, right? That's the whole purpose, and have that power. So yeah, if you decide you still want to do this after seeing this nightmare of what happened to me, I will provide these 3D print files. I will provide images on how to solder everything up, where it goes, where you can get all these components and where to place them in the case. And yeah, once I get my new board, guys, I will totally update you guys. Maybe I'll make a short, maybe I'll post on social media, or maybe I'll make a full video just going through it. We'll test some performance stuff and battery time, battery usage, because first thing everyone asks, oh, how long are those Nokia batteries going to last? Probably not long, but we will find out exactly how long. And yeah, thanks for listening to me rant, guys. I look forward to making the updated video on this. I know there's a lot of interest on this project. Just for me right now, I've started a new job and I have been so busy. So I've had to work on this like one day a week. And things kept going wrong for me. I'm terrible at soldering. If someone wants to send me a better soldering station, please, by all means, Hackle, please. But yeah, I will get this fixed up and I will show it off in a new video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.